Hi again, everybody. Looks like we have a few more submissions this week, so I wanted to make sure that I get everybody some good feedback. So, Francesco is first up with his images, and what I really like is that he's gone in and taken some photographs of the workers at the soup kitchen that he is doing his service at. He made an interesting choice here in these images, and I think it's one that we should talk about a little bit. That choice is to put his images in black and white. And we have to remember when we put something in black and white, it tends to have a very different look and feel. I guess, the mood of the images is a little bit different. So when we have black and white, it tends to have the connotation of being old, being something that's been going on a long time, um, versus when we do something in color, it tends to feel much more real and in the moment. And that's not to say here that black and white feels unreal or fake. It just sort of has more of a timeless nature to it. So in this sense, I think it works, and I think it works really well for what he's doing. I really love this first shot. We've got the guy's head right up in that area of the rule of thirds that I think works really well. I love having all of this negative space right here. I'm going to run in and do a few adjustments here on this image because I think one of the keys to good black and white imagery is starting to get a nice separation of our blacks and our whites. When our images tend to sort of hang up with a lot of middle grays and not a lot of separation in all of our tones, they tend to look a little bit flat. So just watch what I'm going to do here, and you can see how we can just do some minor adjustments and really make this image pop pretty quickly. So I'm just going to click on any layer adjustment. Doesn't make a difference which one I'm clicking on. In this sense, I'm just going to take a curves layer adjustment, and then I'm going to switch the blending mode to screen. When we switch a blending mode to screen, what that does is it brightens up all the bright areas already. So it's kind of essentially making the image brighter. And then if you can see, it's put this white mask onto the layer. And hopefully you guys have all done the tutorials, but if you haven't, these white masks basically can be wiped off or erased off by selecting a black, I'm over here, a black paintbrush. So we just want to make that black square in the foreground. And then in this instance, I thought the area of his shirt, the exposure was really good on. And I think maybe these cabinets up here, it looked pretty good on. So we can kind of erase that adjustment there. But I think the rest of the photograph needed that little bit of, extra pop from the brightening up that we're doing. And even his hat, maybe we can darken his hat up a little bit too. So you can see when we go after, and then the before, you can see how that really lifts that image up and kind of gives it that real snappy look that I think really good black and white imagery should have. So a great job on this image. I like what you're doing. I think you're off to a solid start here. Our second image, this is one where it really is noticeable. Notice how the image looks very, very gray. There's not any whites in the image. Gosh, look at their aprons. Those should be white. Some of the things in the background, the paper towel, the refrigerator, the cabinets, all of those should be a lot lighter than they are. So again, we just take that adjustment layer, click on it once, don't do anything, but then pull that blending mode down to screen, and voila, we now see it is much brighter. And then just, again, we paint off the mask in the areas that we want to be darker in the image. Her hair probably a little bit darker. Her shirt, we could probably make a little bit darker. Stuff like that. And to be honest with you, I'm still seeing a lot of darkness in this photograph and a lot of sort of middle grays. We're still not getting the separation I want. So I'm going to do another technique here, which is even a little bit more advanced technique. So in this time, it's really important that we're taking a curves adjustment layer. Click on that one more time. And then go down to the properties where we can change the adjustments in there. Click on this little finger, and on the whites, if you click on it and hold the mouse down, in the white areas, we can now either make them lighter or darker. So in this instance, I'm making those whites lighter, and then I'm going to click on a darker area. Now this isn't a real darker area, but it's darker than the whites, and I'm going to click on that again, and I'm going to bring that down. So basically what I did was I darkened the darks and I lightened the lights. And if you notice now in my curve here, it's almost more like an S shape that's going on rather than a straight line. So of course maybe we can look at this and say, okay, maybe that adjustment went a little too far. We can kind of toggle that back. And again, you can see before, after, excuse me. And I think right about there gives us a really nice black and white image. So, Francesco, really look at your images when you go with the black and white, and you got to finesse them a bit and make those areas of black and white and middle grays all kind of separate from each other, so you don't have sort of this really flat gray looking image. And then your last image, again, same feedback here. I think it's a solid shot. I like the shot. Sort of gives the viewer an idea of what things are like before all the people come in to be served. And again, I think real simply we just hit that screen adjustment, and then we can do this, and we know his apron should be white. We know the tables maybe should be dark. So again, that kind of gives us a little bit better image here. And then, I think areas like even this in the background here, we could probably go in and even just lighten those up a little bit more. And again, I went a little too far there, so we can just adjust the opacity in that layer, and there we go. So again, here's your before, pretty dark, and kind of feeling ominous and very melancholy. And certainly this place is doing a wonderful service to the community, so we want it probably a little bit brighter and a little bit more cheery. So here we go, and I think that's a good representation here. So I like the black and white. I like the direction you're going with. I think I just want you to really start to finesse those prints a little bit using the adjustments that we've learned. And again, go back to the tutorials if you're struggling on these. So good job, and look forward to your final prints next week on Monday. Thanks. So next up we have Lucian's work, and he was at the same facility that Francesco was at, and in this instance we've got a really beautiful image. I love this shot. Sort of the negative space and the emptiness of the room, just with the one, I presume that's a volunteer. But in any case, even if it's a client of the soup kitchen, I think it's a great shot because it just sort of tells us a little bit about the place and how many people it serves, and showing the empty chairs and the place that we can almost imagine being filled up just a little bit after this photograph is taken, once people come in. So I love that a lot. The one thing here, Francesco, maybe I'm not so excited about is just having her in color. Almost feels a little bit gimmicky to me. If we look in any photography magazines or any kind of serious photographic publications or gallery exhibits, you almost never see the technique where we just have one person in color and everything else in black and white. Again, I use the word gimmicky here. I think you need to have a real compelling reason to do it. And in this instance, I just think the image is so wonderful on its own. Why resort to a gimmick here? Or a special effect. Maybe a special effect would be a little bit better way to describe it. I think, as a realistic, natural image, it works. And I think one of the reasons you want to go more realistic here as opposed to special effects is that you want to say this place is very real and what happens here is something that takes place every single day. When you go to a special effect, people start to look at it and say, okay, well, is this real or is this just kind of the imagination of the photographer? So maybe consider doing all of your images in black and white or all of your images in color. But I'd kind of avoid the isolated just one color technique. Another great shot here. Again, it's not real clear whether these are the volunteers or clients of the agency. I think that brings up a really good topic for all of us. We have to title our images for your final project or your final service project portfolio. So with a title, I think this image becomes a little bit more compelling. It lets the viewer know who these people are, whether they're waiting in line or waiting to be served, or says something about them as volunteers. Again, just like we did with Francesco's work, I think we could brighten this image up. So just click on any one of your curves, or any one of your adjustments, create a new layer, and then simply change your blending mode to screen and notice how all of the details in all of their shirts kind of comes up. Now, of course, what's happening here, you've got lots and lots of noise in your image. So make sure you review the last video that I did. I believe it was Kat's work. We did some noise reduction on it in the last video in this module. So go in there and take a look at the technique in Camera Raw for eliminating noise. Now we will also have the opportunity to take care of noise. The demonstration previously I did was in Camera Raw. We can also right into the Photoshop interface reduce noise by just going down to filters and I'm sorry, I did add noise. We want to reduce noise. So go filter, noise, reduce noise. And it is a pretty memory intensive technique. So you'll notice when I hit the return button, this is going to take a little bit of time to actually kick in. Oh, actually didn't take a lot of time. Let's go back to, yeah, it did kick in there. So you can see it got rid of a little bit of the noise. I'll kick it back one. So I know it's kind of subtle, but you got to play around with it a little bit and you can start to get rid of it. Ideally, we want to do this in Camera Raw rather than the Photoshop interface. But again, great shot. I like the fact that you're courageous enough to get in there and get some images of the people also, because I think they're a very important part of this story. Just for everybody, I want to make sure that when you do photographs of people, you do ask their permission, and you also either offer to send them a photo or email them a photo, and just generally build up a good relationship with these folks so that it's not just you kind of taking from them. We want to make this a two-way street, and by offering to maybe give them a photograph, you might endear yourself to them and put yourself in a position that you might be able to get some other images too. So if that's the case, and you need to get some prints, let me know. We do have a printer up in the department, and we can get you some prints to distribute to some of the people you took photos of. So good job on this image also. And then our last shot, again, love what you're doing here. You sort of capture some of the feel of the interaction between the people that are there. I think the three images that you picked are really wonderful in the sense that they're all very different and they all really give us a flavor of the entire day in this place. The one thing I want you to consider as we get to the end of this project is I think you really need to make a decision about, are you going to go black and white or are you going to go color? I want you to do all black and white, or I want you to do all color. Don't mix up the two. I think when you mix up the two, it reduces cohesion in the project. And certainly I discussed this a little bit in the module in the actual lesson itself. But again, I think for cohesion and just making all the photographs seem as though they're part of one entire series, I think you need to do everything in either color or black and white. So don't kind of flip-flop halfway during the project. So if you have any questions on that or want to discuss that a little bit more, certainly feel free to shoot me an email or give me a buzz, or we can even get together if that's something you need to do. So good job here, and again, I like what you're doing, so keep up the good work. Okay, and last on our list here, we've got Brittany's images, and it looks like she's working at Danceability, and gosh, really, really, really love this image. I think the key here is that you've gotten up close to the subject and you've captured this just absolutely wonderful expression on his face. You can see how much he's enjoying being at this place. It certainly gives us a sense of who is there as participants in it. And I love the fact that you've got the background out of focus and his face really is in sharp focus. And look at this light. I love how, the light's coming from the ceiling, and because it's coming from the ceiling, it's just illuminating the front of his face there. Gosh, really, really beautiful shot. If I was to have one little thing to say, one little refinement here, and honestly, it's given what takes place and how fast everything's going. I'd love to see this arm not interrupting him, but that's really, really a minor point. So beautiful job on this photograph. Just can't say enough about it. Really love it, and think you've got an absolute home run in this image. So good job with that one. Again, another shot I really love. Again, you give us a sense of what the place is about, what they do. I love that you've got these repeating patterns of all of the, I don't know, the hula hoops or whatever this thing is that they're all holding. And I love how that repetition of pattern goes all the way into the photograph, sort of very, very deep. It's also an image that has a lot of dimensionality to it. We've got a sense that this picture extends very, very far into the frame. And it's like we can almost reach out and touch these people in the front of it. So, again, fantastic job. I think you're just well on your way to coming up with a great project here. I do wonder if this image, maybe we can go just a teeny bit lighter, and again, there's lots of ways to do that, but in this sense, I might just go in and select one of my layer adjustments and then change it to screen, and then I think that's a little bit too bright, so we can just sort of dial that opacity down just a teeny bit, and that's where we end up landing. So super job on that, and again, really, really good image that is very different than the previous one. And then last but not least here, boy, another one that is just fantastic. You're really giving us a wonderful sense of what this place is about and what goes on here and how much fun people are actually having. And I think that's something that you really want to convey here. The one thing that is present in all of your images is what we call noise, a lot of digital noise. I've talked about this a little bit with both Kat and Lucian in their images. the best place we want to address digital noise, and just bear with me here because I'm going to grab a file and show you. So one of the reasons I have you guys shooting camera raw is that in this interface there's a fantastic technique for getting rid of noise. So if you go to the third tab from the top, so I'm way up here, and these two triangles where it says detail, go in there, and I'm just gonna drop that noise reduction. So you can see here in the panel we've got a slider for noise reduction. Now this image, at first glance doesn't look like it has a ton of noise, but it actually really does. And you can see I'm shooting this image at an ISO of 3200, which definitely is going to give us a lot of noise. And if we start scrolling in here and we zoom in a lot, we can see that there definitely is noise here. If you notice in her jersey and in the mat on the desk there's a pretty significant amount of noise, in fact. So all we have to do is take this luminance slider and push it over, and I'm going to push it over to about 30, and notice how minimized that is. And I'm going to exaggerate it. I'm going to go all the way to 65. Now you have to be careful when you go that far with your noise reduction, because you don't want your image to start to look kind of cartoony. And I'll show you this once it gets back. So if you notice in the details here, it's almost smoothed that noise out too much, and the image sort of has, well, a cartoony feel. I use the word cartoon because cartoons sort of had that really smooth tonality. So in most cases, I'm going to say you want to keep your noise reduction somewhere between 20 and 30 on images that just have a super wicked amount of noise like the ones that you have here. So that's where you take care of it. It's pretty simple to fix, and I know you're just in a situation here that you've got to use high ISOs, because I imagine there is just not a lot of light there. And let's see if we've got any kind of ISO. Actually, you're at an ISO of 800, so I mean that's not super high, but the noise is definitely here. There's no doubt about that. So make sure you use that noise reduction, and other than that, I think your images are really striking, and really looking forward to seeing the project come together as a whole. So thanks, Brittany, and look forward to seeing everybody's work come Monday night at midnight. So everybody make sure you mark that down and you get in your work, and hopefully we'll have loads of good projects here. So everyone have a good weekend, and we'll see you next week, probably on Tuesday.